I'm going to disseminate to you now an enormous chunk of information. First of all, the Constitution was written a very, very, very long time ago by our forefathers who were men, and they were rich white landowning men, and that meant that it was not gone over, signed, ratified, assented to by women or black people or other people of color. And it was written by those rich white landowners who were men for rich white landowning men. It was written to keep them in power because people in power don't like to share power. That's just a sort of a rule of thumb that's about as immutable as rules of physics or laws of physics. And the other thing is that it is time now, according to that Constitution, to do some amending of that Constitution. There's actually a clause in there that says, at these intervals, we shall look again at the Constitution and possibly amend it. And so this is what California calls for a constitutional convention is trying to do now. We are trying to call everybody from all states to the table to give this this constitution, this document that directs all our lives. We're trying to give it a maintenance check and a tune-up. And we would really, really like it if everybody came to the table and had a say in this. We're called California Calls for a Constitutional Convention, and you can check us out on Google. Let me switch over to John now. Justin, maybe you can mute yourself for just a minute.
Sure.
John, turn your microphone back on, please, and tell us, give us your take on what might be a possible solution to everybody being torn apart by the status quo at current, you know, and the whole political scene being so polarized.
I think it's a pretty simple solution. I think, you know, a lot of people talk about the need for a third party. I think we need to have a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth party. The idea of this duopoly is nothing more than a controlled narrative, especially when you're looking at how both parties are controlled by big money and corporate interests. They don't care if it's a Democrat or a Republican in office. They get what they want regardless. Red or blue, the bombs never stop. And the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And it's a trend that has to be bucked. Article 5 in the Constitution allows for a convention of states. And the founders of the Constitution, they wrote that in specifically, like you said, so that the populace could check the power of the government, because an unfettered government is never going to be working toward what's best for people, but rather for the donors. So CalConCon, the California Calls for a Constitutional Convention, that's the progressive voice. You have the right wing with people like Ben Shapiro and Sean Hannity behind it, calling for a convention of states. They're gaining momentum. More states are signing on every week, and no one is really talking about this. So CalConCon is the only organization that I'm aware of that's preparing a progressive agenda to be introduced should this right-wing movement find success and Article 5 be successfully initiated. So we're in a position to see great change, and if we're successful at finding multiple party platform, we need a voting system that people can have faith in as well, because anybody with any sense knows that our voting system is incredibly susceptible to foul play. And we see that really clearly with things like cross-check and gerrymandering and voter roll purges, hacking. There's just like a million ways to
and
cause trouble.
the last election itself.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and I think to that point, something that not many people are talking about is what everybody says is vote. That's basically the only way that you can use your voice, and I think it's a fallacy to think that that's the only way that we can use our voice. And also, honestly, I think that the election system in and of itself is broken, because someone campaigns and they tell you what you want to hear so that you'll vote for them, and then they're in office for 2, 4, or 6 years, and in that span of time they're able to do whatever it is they want. They can sell themselves to the highest bidder, which we allow through lobbying, and for profit, so that they're able to fill their coffers or their campaign finances. And then they're able to vote not necessarily with their conscience, but with the wallet, the incoming money that they're doing. And it's no wonder that politicians these days, you have millionaires and billionaires that are running for office because they know that they're able to turn that public opinion and to generate more money from it, right? So they're profiting personally from the politicizing, right? But we're living in a day and age where everything is getting disrupted, right? Like Uber is disrupting the taxi business. Airbnb is disrupting the hotel business. Why aren't we thinking about ways that we can put the voice back into the hands of the people the way that it was originally intended in our Constitution, and allow people that to share their voice and to be able to impact the way that policies are being written, so it's to the benefit of the people? And I think that through the way that we have encryption, the way that we have security, and these different kinds of things, of course, it's going to require diligence. It's going to require us to stay on top of it so that things aren't getting hacked. But instead of having a conversation about should we have electronic voting systems or should we have paper voting systems, should we have write-in ballots, should we allow people to, or like I think Washington or Oregon just set it up so that once you turn 18, you're automatically registered to vote. What about the discussion about gerrymandering? All these kinds of things can be solved if we were to have a real-time system where people can voice and impact the way that policy is getting shaped. And I think that is the only way that the power is going to come back to the American people. Instead of talking about how we can get the right politicians up there, no politician is right. That's the bottom line. And especially because what you're seeing is anybody who's running independent or green or libertarian or whatever it is, they're never going to find their way into a major office. They can win small elections, but they're not going to be able to win on a national scale because everybody always follows lockstep with what the major messaging is. And if you're a longtime Democrat or you're a longtime Republican, then you will always do whatever they tell you to do. It's been proven time and time again. The only reason why Abraham Lincoln was able to be voted in as president is because it was a time of disruption, and it was the birth of the Republican Party. Had that not happened, he would have lost again. And yet many people argue that he was the best president that we've ever had. So we're facing a time where we need to update the system. And if you want to talk about the party system or whatever, fine, then let's update that as well. But the bottom line is that the entire election cycle and everything that has to go into it is a sham. And it's just time that we're able to put the power back into the hands of the people the way that it was intended in the Constitution back 250 years ago.
Hey, John, how do we do that? Exactly. We need some specifics here. In your mind, how specifically would we do it? Just as saying, how do we put the power back in the hands of the people?
Well, we have to restore faith in the system. We have to figure out a way to make more voices heard, and reform has been constant conversation for my entire adult life. We have to realize at some point that reform isn't going to happen. we have to do something drastic, and that's why one of the main reasons why I'm so supportive of California's secession movement, because if we can successfully become autonomous, then we can lead by example. And as the fifth largest economy in the world, we would be able to do many things that we're not currently able to do in the current system. And that includes giving people with no voice a voice.
Now, in your mind, John, is there any other way besides secession for California to become more autonomous to the point where we're giving a voice to all those people who currently don't have a voice?
Well, I think it already is that way in a lot of ways. California operates as an independent nation in many ways. Our legalization of cannabis is a good example. The sanctuary states laws are a good example. Our emission laws, environmental protection, we stand alone and oftentimes opposed to the federal government and all of those things. So it's really just a matter of formality, in my opinion.
Right.
We're already independent in many ways, and you may have seen recently Mike Huckabee made a tweet about needing to update his passport because he's coming to the foreign land of California, and he was making a joke, but that joke is rooted in a very commonly held belief that California is acting on its own in many, many ways. And the majority of the populace of the United States has a lot of animosity for us. And the newest initiative with Yes California is to reach out to all the different states and find a consensus from them that they want California to be independent.
Okay, I want to remind you guys to mute yourselves when you're not speaking, Justin and John, because I'm hearing some background noise as John's speaking. I'm not sure which end it's coming from. Now, Justin, are you in agreement with John that the only way for California to give everyone a voice is to secede from the rest of the United States?
I don't think it's the only way, but I think it is a way. I really think that California is not the only state that's able to push a progressive agenda. We're able to see it in New York and other places with large metropolitan areas. And I think that California is one of the unique states where it can run on its own because of the agriculture that it has. The financial centers, Hollywood, all those different kinds of things. So sure, that could be one way that it can start to push the agenda. But I think that the way that the Constitution was written originally is so that states have rights and are able to set agendas. And I think that again, just looking at the way that the political system goes, is that there are some mainstream ideas about particular policy agendas. So, for example, Planned Parenthood, and so more conservative states are able to cut things out, right? Well, I don't think that Jerry Brown has particularly been doing a good job, aside from taking a stand and saying we're going to continue to do that, of controlling a national narrative and being able to push the state agenda wider. And so I think that given the state rights, which I think is a more conservative value, that kind of generating some kind of a consensus with other states and being able to, for lack of a better term, sell those ideals or sell those concepts to other states so that they can also be implemented. and sort of templatize the kind of policies that we're generating through the cities and counties of California.